All right, guys. So we got some new numbers to discuss here about the presidential race. Now, look, to this point, we've been seeing poll after poll that shows Kamala Harris up, and the lead was growing. And for a second there, it started to look like, hey, this might become a landslide. It might become a landslide because she had just kept climbing since she became, the Democratic standard bearer. Well, now she sort of leveled out a little bit, depending on which poll you believe. Maybe came back down to earth. It's very possible that the honeymoon is over, in the sense that when she first came out, she was the new shiny toy for a while, and you had the DNC, which went well, and so they had just kept going up and up and up and up and up. Well, a poll just came out, and I think the reason why this is kind of a big deal, I think it's like an A-rated or A-plus rated pollster, like a massive, massive sample size is part of it. I believe it was a New York Times poll, and that poll has her one down nationally. Now, remember, if modern history is any indication, a Democrat needs to win by like 3 points or more in order to win the election. So that would mean effectively she's about 4 down in this new poll. Okay, so here we have Harry Enton on CNN. He's going to break down where he thinks the state of the race is, and then I have a lot to say about it. Here we go.
And just point out how close this race has been, consistently close. All right, campaigns where any candidate led by at least 5 points in the polls. Look, most of the time there's at least some stretch where one of the candidates is ahead by at least 5 points. At least 3 weeks in which one candidate led by at least 5 points. That happened in every single campaign from 1964 to 2020. How many days have we had this campaign where one candidate was ahead by at least 5 points nationally? Look at this. Zero.
To be clear, he's talking about the average. On average, there were times in all these campaigns where somebody led by 5 points or more. There was a poll that had Kamala up 6, but she never was able to get her average to 5 or above.
0 days. 0 days. The fact is this race has been consistently tight in a way that we have never seen before, Mr. Berman.
This is always versus never.
Correct.
That's the difference between this campaign and every other campaign we've seen for the last 75 years or so. All right, the battleground polls that we're looking at. Give us some perspective on how close they are.
Sometimes we look at these 7 close states and, you see all these numbers that are up there and you go, I can't make heads or tails of it. So I just want to sort of combine them and look at the Democrat versus Donald Trump in those 7 closest battleground states. Look at the 2020 final margin and average across these 7 states. It was Biden plus 0.9 points. You don't think that could get any closer? We can, in fact, get closer. Look right now, Kamala Harris up, but get this, by just 0.6 points on average. Only about half a point, 0.6 of a point. My goodness gracious. That is how tight we are talking right now across these 7 battleground states. It is a race, Mr. Berman, that is well within the margin of error when you look across these 7 key battleground states that will determine this election.
You look at this and you go, 0.3%. They're basically the same. But you're talking about actual vote margins that were so small. So show us the difference that a polling margin can make.
All right. So let's just say the polls match up perfectly to what the results end up being. Kamala Harris would win this election with 292 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 246. But let's just say we move the current polls, and let's say the result differs by them by a single percentage point, and Donald Trump is the beneficiary of it. Look at this. If Trump outperforms his current polls by just a single point, you take that Kamala Harris win, and look at this. Donald Trump gets 287 electoral votes, because the bottom line is Pennsylvania would flip up here, and you would also get this flip out in Nevada over here. And that, my friends, is what we're talking about. We are talking about the closest campaign in a generation where a single point could make all the difference in the world. John, this is a truly exciting race right now where any slight movement can make all the difference in the world.
So that is quite a picture that they're painting. They're saying this election is just deadlocked, super close. Anything can happen. Now, I will say, look, I don't think they're wrong, but we were just in a position where Joe Biden was down 5 points on average to Trump, which means he's actually down 9, 8. And so I think a lot of liberals and leftists and Democrats feel like, all right, it's even, right? It is what it is. And even that feels better than the alternative of Trump could be running away in a landslide right now. So I don't necessarily see a lot of panic setting in on the Democratic side, right? But having said that, I mean, you could look at it from a number of different perspectives, right? If the polls are dead on, Kamala ekes out a victory. If If there's a secret Democratic vote out there, she could win with over 320 electoral votes. If there's a secret Trump vote out there, Trump can win, and potentially even just over 300 electoral votes as well. So, again, we're now back in the place where it's like total speculation, total flip a coin, trying to read the tea leaves to figure it out. I'll also point out, this is probably a point of caution as well, because I think his models have been more accurate than other pollsters, but Nate Silver now has it at, I think it was like 63% chance Trump wins. And I believe the difference is because he had factored in a Kamala Harris bump from the DNC, and now the DNC is over, and so that bump is going to revert to the mean. And so now he says it's a 63% chance or so that Donald Trump wins. Look, there's one other poll that I want to show you, which worries me, and it's this one right here. Do you think Kamala Harris represents change or more of the same? Only 25% say major change. 15% say minor change. 56% say more of the same. With Trump, 51% say he represents major change. 10% minor change, only 35% more of the same. So in other words, this number's not close. Trump is viewed as the change candidate, and Kamala's viewed as more of the same. She's viewed more as the status quo candidate. I do not like these numbers for Kamala. Because if it's a change election, which it very well may be, then it's not going to cut in her direction. So, I mean, look, if I was her, I would work on this big time to really try to define herself as more of the change candidate. And in order to do that, I think you should harp away on the policies that Tim Walz is harping away on the campaign trail. Just we're going to do 12 weeks paid family leave and 12 weeks paid sick leave. We're going to do free school breakfast and free school lunch for kids. Just take some things that would be a game changer for people that Tim Walz actually accomplished in Minnesota and say, this is what we're going to do. You have our word. We're going to hammer away. We're going to fight until this happens. Because it's not like Trump being viewed as the major change candidate. I think that's just a function of his insane, unfiltered, over-the-top personality. They're like, oh, this guy isn't like other politicians. He's kind of crazy. I guess he would do major change, right? The Democrats can't just be crazy and get those numbers. They actually have to give logical reasons as to why they would be more for major change than Trump. Now, having said all that, it's also possible that this is still more of a let's stay normal election. I mean, the 2020 election was let's go back to normal because Trump was in there for 4 years and it was hell. And people said, let's just give me a regular politician. I'll take that over Donald Trump. So then the question is this election going to be a change election, or is it going to be a let's just avoid the psychopath election? That's all up in the air. So look, I tend to think that their analysis, Harry Enton here, is correct. I tend to think Nate Silver's maybe slightly overestimating Trump. I'd be comfortable with, you say 55% chance Trump wins, but really I'm more still 52%, 53% Kamala wins. I don't have a method that leads me to that position. That is just my total gut, visceral feeling and based on the things I've read. But two factors can really be determinative in this election that I want to keep bringing up, and I don't see other people really bringing it up, which is, number one, there's been a lot of evidence coming out lately that there are way more Democratic signups to vote, way more Democratic registrations to vote than Republican ones. Some of the numbers with some of the key demographics are skyrocketing. So that actually could be almost like the secret Kamala vote that we talked about. And the other thing is, as you all know, in the Republican primary, Trump underperformed the polls by 8 percentage points, which again seems to indicate there might be a sleeper Kamala vote, and there also might be some Republicans telling pollsters, yeah, I'm for Trump, but then ultimately they don't actually vote for Trump, because this is what we've seen in every election since 2020. This is what we've seen. The more Trumpy the candidate, the more they lose. Right now, Trump might be different in that he's the head guy, right? He's the big boss man, and maybe with him, he at least holds his poll numbers in this general election. But there's certainly evidence of more of a secret Democratic vote out there at the moment. In 2016 and 2020, it was quite the opposite. There was a secret Trump vote out there. And, the polls really couldn't account for that. Now, again, the ultimate question remains, is there a secret Kamala vote out there? Are the polls dead right? Or is there still a secret Trump vote out there like back in 2020 and 2016? We're going to find out. But, I mean, look, the polling, while it's certainly relevant and necessary, I would also take it with a slight grain of salt, because the models can only account for who they think is going to vote, not who is actually going to vote, right? So it's worth it for what it is, and it's better than nothing, but it's still, there's still factors that we can't quite get the total picture of. But there you have it. Look, according to these experts, this thing is like dead tied. So you got to run through the tape. That's the bottom line. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.